presenting the main channel man himself, Uncle Louie. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Uncle Louie, coming at you with the first episode of this podcast. Now, this podcast was actually a work in the making for quite a long time, and it took apparently a very long set of years, contemplating and planning, and honestly, just enough, I want to say, inspiration and drive and motivation to actually finally start doing the podcast. I'd actually intended to do the podcast quite a long time ago, but at the time, I want to say it was a bit impossible just because there were a lot of things that kind of held me back from actually doing it. One of the main things was the biggest at least I would consider one of the biggest obstacles for many people, especially when they're starting out. I want to say is money. Yes, you heard right. I said money. Money is often the one thing that prevents people from actually, pursuing or getting started. If we're being quite honest, getting started is actually fairly simple, but if you don't have the money to back it up, to whether you want to buy the equipment or you need maybe a laptop, again, kind of falls in mostly with the equipment. But if you don't have enough money to buy the equipment, then you're not really going to get anywhere for quite a long time, or at least until you obtain the necessary resources and funds to begin your projects. I kind of wanted to start out this podcast fairly simple and in kind of give an introduction of sorts into why I got into podcasting, what kind of led me here, the actual journey behind it, my own personal story. And I'll tell you, it's actually quite interesting, at least in my perspective, because I had actually been wanting to do something, at least something similar to this kind of line of, I want to say activity, or not necessarily a profession, at least maybe not yet, but something this fun for me, this project. And it actually, like I said, it started fairly long ago. Um, I want to say, honestly, since middle school, but I didn't seriously think about it until maybe I was, what can I say, a sophomore, freshman, sophomore in high school. And that was quite a few years ago. More than 3, that's for sure. Maybe like 5 ish. Yeah, I'm older. And you sometimes you wonder where the time went. Anyways, yeah, it actually all started when I got the media tech class that my local high school was offering, and the teacher, she was great. Not really gonna give out names, but she was fantastic, very creative. Kind of allowed us to push the limits with what we can come up, whether it be um, concept videos or themed videos, kind of the same thing. But we would have fun with that class as a whole and our projects. And I noticed that one of the things they did was they would have, let's see, they would have a morning newscast with a lot of the MediaTek people. Usually, it would be just the seniors, or I think the juniors and the seniors, who would go into that particular portable where that class was located, and they would go into the back room where it was relatively soundproof, at least soundproof enough to keep a lot of the noise from the classroom that was, just a door away from bleeding into that particular space. And they would have a green screen, and they would put this these little pictures or something, background stuff when they would start their little newscast. And I think that's where it kind of started for me, and I got the inspiration for it. Now, after that, after kind of realizing that I was seriously interested in something like this and that it was something I could see myself doing, if not professionally, then for fun, then yes, I wanted to find a way, a safe way, in a sense, to get this project going from just a mental thought or a theory into actual action. Be a man of action. So some time passed because obviously I didn't start it back then. There were some minor attempts, but since my heart wasn't completely in it, they never really came to fruition. And honestly, they were half assed. They weren't very great, they weren't well thought out. The content would just be whatever I made up that moment, and I would actually find it very hard to keep a straight story, and my transitions were just completely awful, which is pretty ironic considering when I have conversations with people, especially if I get along with them, they just go on and on and on, and the transitions are so seamless that I don't even notice it myself. Not even the people that I talk with until maybe after the conversation's done, and then they kind of, think about it. It's like, wow, I spent this much time talking to this guy, whether I was a friend or just an acquaintance or a stranger to them, you know, it would be long conversations and it would just be so smooth. It's almost like the setting in a sense for creating and recording a podcast, but without the equipment. But the personality was there. The little quirks and traits were already there and already present because of the years of development. And so once I actually noticed this, I I want to say senior year and my first year of college, that's where I really noticed the difference. Because, as you grow up, you start having a little bit more maturity in your way of thinking, and you kind of enter, or at least I entered, a particular period of self reflection. You know, what are good things about myself? What are bad qualities or traits? What can I do to change them? It was a pretty important time in my life, and I knew that, as corny as it may sound, I actually got some of this from a Spider Man movie. I believe it was the first Spider Man movie with Tobey Maguire. And it was that scene where he's talking with Uncle Ben, and it's actually the last time he sees Uncle Ben when Peter, his Tobey Maguire's character, tells Uncle Ben a lie that he's going to the library, and in fact he's actually going to the wrestling match to win some money to get a car to impress Mary Jane. Anyway, you know I'm straying from the story or the point, but that particular car ride, once they arrived in front of the library, Uncle Ben had the intention to talk to Peter and kind of have a man-to-man talk with him, because Peter was a senior. He was kind of getting ready to graduate, and Uncle Ben wanted to kind of give him some advice, man-to-man. And it was advice on, kind of becoming a man, a passage of age or rite of passage, something of that sort. Being conscious of yourself, because in those particular years, as you're getting towards the that cusp of adulthood, transitioning from 18-year-old high schooler or 17-year-old high schooler into the college man, or post high school graduation, you have a little bit more responsibility on your head, because now there's a more expectation of you because of your growth as a person, and ultimately, that growth that will lead to the goal of being an adult, whatever your perception of adulthood may be. And so he's in the car, he's talking with Uncle Ben, and Uncle Ben tells him, Peter, these are the years. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, so forgive me if I don't have it correct, but these are the year that a man becomes the man he will be for the rest of his life. And honestly, those words kind of haunted me. Honestly, they did. They haunted me to the point where I really thought about it. I would spend nights thinking about it, and occasional parts of the day. A lot of times I found myself alone anyway, so I had nothing but plenty of time and space to think about myself and anything else, honestly, I wanted to. So once I figured out, going back to the whole podcasting thing and the traits that would kind of lead me to, going down that path, the more I thought about my interactions, who I am, what are my traits, what are my quirks, the more I realized, or the more I soon came to realize that I have that, at least to my mind, I have that personality to kind of make a story, tell it, in a sense, sell it, but without the intention of selling it. It's genuine. You can say it's from the heart, from the soul, however, but it's sincere. It's sincere. And that's something that, a lot of people don't really have. And, I'm not saying there aren't people out there that don't have this, but it falls short because I've been around different places, you know, uh, different cities, met different kinds of people, and the one thing that I've noticed, and it honestly makes me a bit sad, is that your typical average person doesn't know how to have a conversation. And sometimes, even if you yourself who are engaging with this person, talking with them, even if you're good, they're not gonna respond the same way that you respond to them. Maybe, honestly, you're a stranger, at least to their eyes. If you're a stranger, they're gonna be hesitant because they don't know you. But I think that's the risk that not all the time, but sometimes, people should take, because you never know. You could be right next to a person with a plethora of treasure wisdom. I know that sounded kind of weird, but yes, a plethora of treasure wisdom. You know, everybody has their own story. Everybody has their tale of woe, and you can honestly learn from them because they went through. Maybe they might have gone through something that you've gone through yourself, but you always thought or felt isolated because when you go through something, whether it be good or bad, you kind of think that you're the only one. You kind of feel isolated, alone. But that is not the case. There are plenty of people out there, and people, this is why you shouldn't judge a person just by how they look, because at least through my experiences, I have met plenty of people, wonderful people. They might have their problems, whether it be with drugs, or they're homeless, or they're seen as very negative people in different aspects, or just undesirables in a sense. they have had some of the best stories I've ever heard. Better than people, who claim to be good, in quote. But it's marvelous and amazing to me. It almost shocks me that their stories are so good, and the lessons, the things that you learn from life itself from those kind of people, it's astounding. And the real true shock from it, that I take from it, is that a lot of people choose to ignore these type of people. They see them as individuals beneath them, and just look the other way, turn their face to the opposite direction and just walk away. But when you take a chance, again, you shouldn't talk to strangers so willingly, but sometimes if you have a gut instinct that this is a good person, chances are they might actually be a good person, and you might actually get to learn something interesting from them. And so, this kind of goes back to, like I said, my experiences with talking to people and enjoying it, and enjoying hearing their story. And out of that, I found another aspect of coming to the podcast conclusion. The conclusion of making my own podcast. And that is, I liked hearing stories. I would often listen to podcasts, on social media like Facebook, YouTube, an old type of program that I used to have that primarily looked up podcasts, and it would just be about anything, whether it be romance or about music or books, just putting it out there. I like listening to people, like interviews, whether it be with video or just the audio. It's fantastic. I love listening to stories. Kind of brings you back to childhood. But anyways, that's the second point, and another vital point in realizing that I wanted to do this podcast, because not only did I like listening to the story, but since I have had a variety of stories and experiences myself, I have tales to tell. And some people might not find it interesting. That's fine. You're not going to appeal to everybody out there, but there definitely will be some people, some particular individuals that will kind of give you their ear, be patient with you, listen, and they could be going through anything, whether it be a particularly tough time for them, or maybe they're just in a very good mood, and sometimes they just want to kind of escape from it all, hear a story, kind of go back to, in a sense, go back to childhood and be that kid, listening to someone tell a story. Because honestly, we've all been through that at least once. Whether we're kids or we're adults, we've been through it. Where someone tells a story and it's so interesting, and you're just giving them full undivided attention, and you're, kind of hanging on their every last word. And, especially when they get to like the climax of the story, and they kind of wait maybe a few seconds to, build that suspense, get that interest to the next level. And then you're just, going to the edge of your seat, and then finally when they tell you how it ends, you're just like, you have that release of pressure, of that tension within you that says, oh, okay, that happened. It could be a good ending, those typical happy endings, or it could be a complete tragedy, but it resolved. And that's the thing that I liked. And I thought to myself, I have stories, I have ideas, I have perspective, I have thoughts that I would like to share. However vain it may sound, or however narcissistic sometimes I may sound, it's the truth. And I think everybody has a little bit of vanity and narcissism in them. Otherwise we wouldn't be ourselves. You kind of have to be a little bit narcissistic to be yourself. You know, in a sense, you have to be narcissistic to have that confidence to, act the way you feel is right, the way you feel best represents you the best. I know it's a lot of repetition of words, but either way, at least I hope you get the point. And so, through that long list of people that I've met and that enormous amount of time of self-reflection, I learned about myself, and I've figured out and came to the conclusion that I want to go ahead and start a podcast. I mean, I already had that podcast thought in my mind from before the self-discovery, self-analysis stage of my life, but now there was a purpose. There was a purpose behind it. There was a little bit of passion, building, and over time it built much more strongly. And so now it finally came to fruition. And honestly, I am so excited to be doing this podcast, to, be starting what is, at least what feels to me, almost like a milestone in my life. Because I do original music, I'm a musician, so I have probably on this channel that you're gonna find these podcasts, there are gonna be a lot of videos of me playing guitar, or whether they be my own original songs or I cover a song. You're gonna find that, and I can just add that, add the whole podcast thing to another list of passions of mine besides music, because music, kind of takes the top spot. But a part of being a musician is telling a story, whether it be with songs with lyrics or an instrumental that tries to convey a particular emotion or setting. It's like almost like a canvas. You're trying to paint a picture, with music, and if it's just an instrumental, you have to use particular chords and notes to convey a specific emotion or a specific setting. And with a regular song, your typical song with lyrics, not only do the lyrics actually give you a story, but the music sets up the scene. It'd be weird if the lyrics sounded all happy, but yet the music sounded dreadful. Dreadful in the sense, melancholic. Not horrible, but melancholic or sad. And then you have, the people that are the storytellers, but that don't include the music in the background or anything in the background. Is, they're just telling you the story as it is. Basically the raw version of it. Uncensored in a sense, unfiltered. And that's where this kind of lies, where this is what I want to do, this is what I came to do, and I'm happy I'm doing it, and I hope to be doing this for a very long time. Whether people will listen to it or not, I don't know. I can only hope. But at the end of the day, I will be, at least in the sense of, or for the sake of this particular podcast, I will be your storyteller. I will be your host. I will be the guy that will give you his perspective, his opinion, his personality in a sense. And like I said, through all of that led me to here, led me to create this, my own podcast finally. And now, now it's kind of surreal that I'm doing it. And that's really, that's the conclusion of the whole podcast concept, just staying a concept or just staying a hope or a dream. That's the end of it, because now it's actually out there. And like I said earlier, I hope it continues. Have great content. If there's enough subscribers and they want me to talk about a particular topic, I'll read through the comments if there are any, and I'll try my best to include the topics that are suggested. And through all of that, kind of just want to end this on a good note. And I want to say welcome to the first episode of my podcast. And I hope you enjoy. This is your host, Uncle Louie. And I'll catch you next time.